It's the first week in September, and that means it's time for the Radio Scientific Game. Sorry, I'll say that again. One battery scientific game. And that's a challenge offered by Radio Club 72 to see how many QSOs you can make using just one 9-volt battery before it runs down. I thought this would be fun, and I've made some videos in the past year about the making and using of these QCX Mini transceivers, which I think are fantastic. So I thought I'd give it a go with one of these. And in my earlier videos, I said and I thought that I didn't think these would really work very well with small alkaline batteries, but I think I was wrong. I had a little test last night and I actually made some QSOs, so I was really pleased. So I'm ready to give this a go. So at the moment, I power this with this big box here, which is 4 hunks of lithium 18650 rechargeable battery, which with a voltage regulator gives me 12 volts, and it lasts for hours and hours. It's fantastic. So I'm going to take that out, and I've got a brand new pack of 9-volt batteries, so I'm going to take one of those out now, get it ready. Here it is, and then all I need to do is just pop on the battery snap, get rid of my big battery. Here we go. And then plug this in, and in a minute I'll just make sure the backlight's off to save power, and I'll be ready to go. I've got a very simple windowsill Radio Shack here, and I'll show you a bit more about that in a minute. But for now I'm going to try making some QSOs for a couple of hours, and hopefully it will last that long, and see just how many I can make with only one battery. So wish me luck. My radio station for this project was simply put onto a windowsill, and it consisted of a QCX Mini running on 20 meters, a pair of cheap headphones, and a Bamatech TPIII Morse pedal, which I highly recommend. Oh, and of course, one battery to power the whole thing. The antenna is an end-fed half-wave, just a simple piece of wire going out of the window and down to the nearest tree. It's just under 10 meters, and somewhere along is a trap to separate the 20 meter and 17 meter bands. Inside the room, the antenna goes to a homemade matching transformer, which I've put into a 3D printed case. Before I started the session, I turned the backlight off on the QCX Mini to save as much power as possible. So, how did it go? So I started at 1045 UTC with a battery at just over 9 volts. And the first thing I did was send some CQs and check the reverse beacon network. And what I found was that the conditions were pretty poor, and that I was getting very few returns, and they were at low single-digit decibel levels. So I didn't have a lot of hope at first. But after about 45 minutes, things began to pick up, and at 11:28, I contacted a station in Denmark, and that was really exciting. And then in the next 30 minutes, I contacted stations in Spain, Norway, and Italy, and they all gave me good, strong reports. I'm not sure how accurate those were, as these stations were all making lots of contacts and they tend to just dish out the same report over and over again. But if they were 599, then I'm really thrilled. Anyway, by that time, I needed some lunch and my battery was down to 8.25 volts. So I disconnected it and then had an hour off for lunch, which was delicious. And then I came back at 1300 UTC after an hour, checked the battery again, just over 8 volts. And I made one more contact, which was 9A2AJ Tom in Croatia, and that's just over 1,000 miles. So I was thrilled to bits when he said my signal strength was S7 579, and I checked with him, and he confirmed after I told him I was running just 1 or 2 watts that it was S7. So I'm really pleased with that. So at that point, very little happened afterwards, and I think nobody was hearing me. And I checked the battery again, it was just below 8 volts, and I think that's pushing the QCX Mini to its limit of operability. So I decided to stop and then review what I'd done. And as I said, I've been all over Europe, and if you look at the graphs and the information published for the QCX, I think that with the voltages I was using, most of the time I was running at least half the power I normally run. So probably 1 to 2 watts instead of 5 watts. And as ever, these figures are really hard to measure or to be accurate about. What have I learnt from this scientific game? Well, it wasn't very scientific, but it was a great game. And the first thing I've learnt is that my previous ideas about batteries were probably completely wrong. It is possible to run a QRP rig on just an ordinary small alkaline battery. And I was amazed at how long this battery lasted, just one 9-volt square battery, and I did 3 or 4 hours of contacting on it, and obviously worked all over Europe, so that's terrific. The second thing I realized is that QRP at really low powers is obviously possible. I've read and seen about other people doing this, and it's the first time I've experienced it myself. So I know some people go down into the milliwatts, and you obviously need to be patient and careful in the way that you work. Choose the moment to call, but it can be done, and it is really enjoyable. I think it's the best aspect of amateur radio. And the third thing I've picked up from this is just how good the QCX Mini is. I love this radio. It gives me an awful lot of fun in a very small package, and the fact that it could cope with such a small power input is amazing. So if you haven't got one and you like amateur radio and QRP, then I highly recommend it. So that's that. I've done that. Now I'm going to submit my log and maybe try this again in future using much lower power just for fun. So I've really enjoyed my weekend of the one battery scientific game, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. So as ever, thanks for watching.